Welcome to the latest episode of Dad's Watching Sports. It is episode 18. It's the week of June 7th, 2020. Yes, it is still 20. It feels like it's been 5 years and it's only been a handful of months here in this year. Thank you so much for joining Dad's Watching Sports. We hope you enjoy our show. We hope you are checking us out in all the different platforms, and we'll kind of get to those here in just a little bit. Michael Draper, Kyle Castles, as always. And as you know, we always have guests from time to time on the show, and we're going to get to our guests in just a minute. But if you haven't checked out our show before and you're checking us out for the first time, we talk a little bit about some sports, some of the biggest things going on in sports, some other topics in sports as we'll get to tonight, but then also about our lives as dads and things in our household, because we all have kids, a lot of them under the age of 5. And, as you guys can imagine, if you're listening to the show, you probably know things get a little crazy, and we like to talk about that. We'd like for you to relate to some of the things that we have going on in our lives as dads, and we are very glad to have you guys a part of our show. As I mentioned, a lot of the times we have some special guests along the way. Sometimes it's just the three amigos, but a lot of times we bring in some special guests along the way, and tonight is no different. We have Chris Lebron of Off the Ball podcast joining us. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, some of the hobbies, favorite sports teams, and then we'll get into your show specifically here in just a little bit.
First of all, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate being on. But I got two little ones. I got a 7-year-old and a 8-month-old, and you guys know how crazy kids are and stuff, So I just finished putting my daughter to sleep. I was actually listening to Moana. Nice. Singing some Moana, so that put her right to sleep. My singing puts her to sleep, so that's good to know. So yeah, it's fun. I got a 7-year-old too, who's he's a ball of energy, and I'm actually going to get to see him next week, so I'm looking forward to that. But love sports. Big sports fan. I went to school for sports management, so sports is kind of the only thing I know how to do. And talking about it, or anything involved in sports, it's just so much fun. I got my associates in sports management. I wanted to be an agent. I tried to go that route, but it's really hard. I realized real quick it's tough it's tough trying to get into that field, and it's. So I dabbled in that for a little bit, after, when I graduated, and did that for around a year and a half. Worked in for a sports agency, and I was an advisor, and just did some small contracts, nothing crazy, but did that, and just then I had my son, so I kind of had to stop, because being an agent, you gotta have a lot of money to give to these guys so they could spend and train and stuff, and it's a whole lot of money, and I just couldn't do all the traveling, so I stopped. And I tried to get back to it, but I just could never grasp it. So I just I said, if I can't be in it somehow, maybe I could talk about it. So I Absolutely. Figured, I was like, that seems feasible. I could do that, without having to go crazy on money and trying to figure out, because all these agent tests were $2,000 to take the test. That's not even guaranteeing you're going to get somewhere. So I just started. I said, let me try the podcasting. Let me see. I like talking sports. Let's figure this out. Did it a few times. Had a co-host. Didn't work out. They just weren't consistent. And I was like, I was like, hey, let's record today. Oh, I don't know. I was like, dude, we were going to do this. Didn't work out. So then I tried by myself. Could never just didn't have the time at that time. And then, I took some time off, and really just started working to whatever, just being a dad and stuff. And then I just one day just said, you know what? I really like talking sports. It's something we do on you do it on a regular without even. So I just said, let me just go at it again. So I just went at it. I figured out, I love basketball. Always, I'm a big literally off the ball. I love when people play off the ball. So that's why I was like, all right, we'll put that together. I talk sports. I like basketball. Let's put off the ball. And I just went with it, and this is what it's been. I started talking about everything. Then I went to just strictly basketball because people like how I talk about basketball, getting very, X's and O's and all that. I would really dabble into it a lot. So I started talking basketball, but then obviously the whole coronavirus happened, and then there's no more basketball. There's no more nothing. So I'm like, damn, man, I was just trying to get, I was like, you know what? Let me just start talking about everything pretty much. So I started getting fantasy football guys on the show, some draft, NFL draft, because I was around the draft time, NFL draft. So I started getting some draft guys, and I just said, you know what? I'll just stick to just talking about everything. But I do mostly the basis is mostly basketball stuff, and I've had some NBA draft guys, prospects on the show, which has been cool. Some insiders on the show, so it's been fun doing this. It's a lot of work, especially when you're doing it by yourself, and you got to do all the pre-recording, making sure all the my notes are good, and then making sure the audio is good and all that, and then promoting and making sure the guests are good and all that stuff, editing. So it's a lot of work, but it's fun when you finish and then people hit you up and say, it's a dope show. So, that's always cool to hear, random people from wherever hit you up and say, your show was great. I love, especially I had a show on with a guy who wrote the life of Michael Jordan, and his stories were just tremendous. Yeah, that was fun. He was talking about, talking with Jordan, being on court with Jordan, talking about his life. And, he also wrote about Kobe too. And we talked about Kobe Bryant, and it's crazy. There's one part of that interview where he talks about Kobe and Jordan, and they have a coach that they both really they use a lot, and the coach would go fly up to Kobe, and then they would go on the same helicopter that unfortunately Kobe passed on. And there's a piece in the interview where he's like, the guy would go, and he's like, he would go on that damn helicopter with Kobe Bryant. But the way he says it, it's like, you feel it. And everyone told me like, yo, I felt that part, because it's like the way he said it, he was just, it was painful for him to say, damn, that damn helicopter. I was like, wow, that was powerful. And I got a lot of good feedback from that, because that was, I felt that. I had to stop for a second and like, oh, wow. Like the same helicopter that he perished in. I mean, this guy was on the plane with Kobe. I love stories like that when I do podcasting too. It's fun to help tell stories and stuff, and so it's been fun. I love this, and can continue to try to put out solid content, and it's just been a blast. It's been a blast.
That's awesome, man. He's Chris Lebron, joining us on this week's Dad's Watching Sports. If you haven't subscribed to us yet in Apple Podcasts, go ahead and do that. If you haven't checked us out on the RTF Sports Network, you can check us out every Monday at noon Central on RTF Sports Network. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, and interact with the show as much as you would like. We'd love for you to email us as well. Guys, before we get into some sports talk, I've got a couple of family stories that I just had to share. And one's I'm going to put a little poll out to you guys as well as put it on Twitter. So we recently, my daughter's 3. She started riding her bike. She's enjoyed riding her bike. She literally asks 5 or 6 times a day, let me go ride my bike. Can we please go ride our bike? I also have a bike. And we recently bought one of those little trailer things, you can put behind your bike for a smaller child to ride in. So we've got our 1-year-old in the trailer. My wife we've been looking for her bike, but COVID strikes again, and there are no bikes out there. So my wife is borrowing my mother-in-law's bike today. So you got me on my bike. I'm pulling the little guy in the trailer. Emma, our daughter, is riding her bike. My wife is riding hers. We're thinking, this is going to be great. It's a family fun day. It's going to be awesome. We're going to do a family bike ride. We get out, do a little bit of riding, and then we decide to try to head back home. And to say our 3-year-old lost her mind is an understatement. That fun family bike ride just turned south in a minute, and it's just a constant reminder of there are no guarantees with 3-year-olds or 2-year-olds or under 2-year-olds. You think, this is going to be great. We're promising popsicles, we're promising no nap time, we're promising all these things. Just make it back to the house without crying. And the last, I don't know, quarter of a mile, Dad, I'm walking my bike, pulling the kid behind me, holding her bike, and she's walking, crying the rest of the way home. And it was just, it went from being something so much fun to something that was just such a headache. But again, just a kind of a constant reminder of you just never know how things are going to go when you have small children. The next thing, guys, that I wanted to bring up is, so last night, it was on Saturday night, my wife went out with some friends. So I'm at home alone. The kids are already in bed, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, I need something to do. There's no sports on. I've watched about every binge-worthy TV show on Netflix or Amazon or whatever you want to say, whatever network you want to go with. And I'm thinking, you know what? Now is the time to really start pushing Kyle for a PlayStation. Because I haven't had one in a long time. My wife is, we constantly kind of joke back and forth about, hey, we should get a PlayStation. I can throw in FIFA or something when the kids are asleep, and they usually get shut down real fast. So, guys, I need a little bit of advice here. What's Kyle? I'll go to you first. What's my argument for a PlayStation? Because I need one, man. It's time.
So, I'm going to try and keep this as G-rated as possible.
Please do.
You have
Family-friendly show.
Absolutely. What you have to do is you have to take those nights and go into the bedroom and wake her up asking for some fun time. And if you wake her up enough asking for fun time, you can go, hey, I wouldn't have to do this if I had.
I see what you're doing there. Yep.
And if she doesn't say no to the fun time, at least she had fun time, right?
Yeah, it seems like a win-win.
A win-win.
It's a win-win situation, man. Yeah, because it's like, come on. I know I'm a grown man, and I know sometimes grown men don't need video games, but at the end of the day, once the kids are in bed, there's nothing else going on. I just want to put some FIFA in or put some, whatever I know they don't have NCAA football anymore, but, whatever the game is now, man, it's tough. Chris, what's your recommendation there?
Speaking of NCAA, I actually trying to find a copy today, and then somebody hit me up. Oh, I'll sell it to you for $150. I was like, nah, I'm good. I was like, nah, I don't need it that bad, because I have it, but it's scratched up. So, okay. But as far as the PlayStation thing, luckily my girl, she likes playing PlayStation with me, and we play FIFA, and so it kind of works out. So plus I had it before we got together, so it comes with. And look, she likes video games. I was like, wow, she's the one. she's the one. So it made it easy. It was a smooth transition. It wasn't like, oh my god, you play video games, blah blah blah. And so she plays FIFA with me. She doesn't beat me a lot. I win a lot. We play 2K. I beat her by 100 one game. I really went in. I shouldn't have went that in, but when you just gotta show her that I could do this good.
That's right. Well, I got to preface this by saying my wife is not anti-video game. I'll be honest. We have some pretty hardcore Super Mario Kart on Nintendo 64 matches, and she beats me a lot. I'll give her credit, honey. I know you're listening, and I know you're probably mad right now, but I will give you props. You beat me in Mario Kart, and I take you out in GoldenEye. But yeah, so classic. Twitter poll is going up right after this show to see should my wife, I'm not going to say allow because she would allow it, but will she be okay with a PlayStation coming into our household? I think she will. Will, without a doubt.
I think so.
All right, guys, let's shift gears to some sports. We've got just a few minutes before a break, so we won't have a whole lot of time to really get into this in depth, but we'll come back after the break and really get into it. The NBA is back. It's not officially back, but it is coming back. We've gotten all the details. It sounds like it's going to be awesome. I am super excited that this is happening. So what it looks like is July 31st is the date. They've got a 22-team format where it's going to be 16 playoff teams, along with 6 other teams that are kind of fighting for those last couple of spots in the playoffs. They're going to be at the Wild Water Sports, Disney Wild Water Sports there in Orlando. It looks like over the next couple of weeks, teams are going to be going back to their cities to essentially get all their players, all their personnel, everybody together. Then they're going to go to Orlando, quarantine for a couple of weeks, and then get things started. The timeline looks like as if every series went to the max and Game 7 of the NBA Finals was something that happened, it would take place October 12th. So we'd be going basketball all the way into halfway through October. And then the teams that don't participate will be getting together at some point in time over the next 6 months to do some sort of like OTA type training camps where they're at least getting some action in. The date that they've got set for the NBA draft lottery is in late August, with the draft taking place just a few nights after the season ends, October 15th. And we'll get into some of the standings before right after this break. But we're going to have to go to break in just a second. But guys, I am hugely excited about this. We finally have something concrete that we can hang our hat on and say sports are coming back on this date. We got 30 seconds. Kyle, just a very quick take on your excitement for NBA, and then we'll get into the details after the break.
Woo!
Yep, absolutely, Chris. I know you're a longtime Knicks fan. It's not an exciting season that's coming back, but it's NBA season. What's your quick take on it?
Man, I'm excited for ball. I mean, even though the Knicks are trash, I'm still happy basketball is coming back very soon.
Absolutely. Well, we got to go to a quick break. We will be right back after that break to talk all things NBA. Plus, we're going to get into some of the stuff that Chris does on his website and a part of his podcast. So we'll be right back on Dad's Watching Sports. Thanks for checking out this week's episode of Dad's Watching Sports. We hope you subscribe to our show in Apple Podcast app as well, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But are you following us on social media? Now, whether your thing is Facebook, Twitter, the Gram, YouTube, or yes, even TikTok, you can find some great dad content on all of our pages. Now, enough of this nonsense. We just need to pay Kirk's PlayStation internet bill. Now, back to the show with Matt, Kyle, Michael, and all the fun of Dad's Watching Sports. Welcome back to Dad's Watching Sports. It's a show all about sports in our lives as dads. We appreciate you checking us out. It is the week of June 7th, 2020. This is episode 18 of Dad's Watching Sports. Michael Draper, Kyle Castles, and this week we are joined by Chris Lebron of the Off the Ball podcast. Chris has been talking to us a lot about basketball, and we're going to get in depth on some NBA stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about his show and some other things that are going on with his show and his website here in just a minute. But guys, we talked NBA's coming back. They've set kind of the firm details. There's no more question. It's coming back. So let's just kind of toss it out there. If you had to go on the record right now of who you feel like is the favorite for the NBA this season, Chris, who you have as the favorite? Are you going chalk with where the standings stand so far?
I think it's the Lakers. They've played great, especially towards when obviously when COVID ended the season, postponed the season. They were playing tremendous. They beat Milwaukee, beating the Clippers. It just seemed like they were really gelling. And with everything going on, not just with COVID with them, but the loss of Kobe Bryant, it just seemed like LeBron was just playing at another level. And he was climbing back, and the MVP was Giannis. Like, he would look like he was going to be unanimous. He was going to be, I think Curry was the first unanimous. He would have been second, but LeBron really is coming on strong. And I just like the way their team is built. They, with Anthony Davis also, he's an MVP candidate as well. They definitely top three. Giannis, LeBron, and AD. That might be the top three. MVP. Voting, and I have Anthony Davis winning Defensive Player of the Year. So I like the way their team is built. They got Green from Toronto last year. He's a sharpshooter. Caldwell Pope. They got Dwight Howard playing great in his in his limited minutes he gets to play. He gets to have an impact and not have be the take the load to being the face of a franchise. And I knew he really wanted to come back to the Lakers, and really, that first stint, there was so hyped that, with Kobe and Nash, and then Nash obviously was, broken down, and he pretty much retired after that. Kobe was at the decline, and then Dwight was, his back, he was just never healthy, and that Lakers team really busted. But, he's playing great. They got a lot of size. Kuzma started coming on too. Rondo's played well. It just seems like it's fate, with the Lakers. It just seems like, with everything going on, and doing this for Kobe, and it feels like they're playing the best basketball of any team. Milwaukee struggled big time. They lost 3 in a row before, and it just seems like Giannis is he's doing too much. He has to do too much for them to really be successful. And the way what happened last year in the playoffs, where Toronto just pretty much built the wall and said, you can't shoot, so we're just going to build a wall, and you're not even going to get to the hole. Before you even drive, we're going to block it. So, and that worked out. And then that's what I worry about with Milwaukee, and the Clippers, or another team, they have the most talent, the Clippers.
For sure.
Their bench is the best bench, but it just seemed like they're not clicking. For some reason, I know they got the injuries. Kawhi is banged up and Paul George is banged up, but it just seems like, they just weren't clicking. And maybe this layoff helps them, but maybe it doesn't. So that's going to be the interesting thing to see is basketball players. You need to work out and play every day. To get that rhythm. So we might see a lot of ugly games. We might see a lot of like 90 style games where it's like 78 to 84. We might see some pretty ugly games. So that's going to be interesting to see, how fast they can get back to normalcy and play at a up tempo pace, because it's, that's how the game is now. But it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. Kyle, the standings as of right now, and these will be the standings going into this 22-team format. In the East, you got the Bucks, the Raptors, the Celtics, the Heat, the Pacers, the 76ers, all in the playoff. You got the Nets and the Magic as the 7 and 8 seed, with the Wizards really the only team to have a chance to get back in there. In the West, it's a little bit different story. You got the Lakers at 1, the Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Oklahoma City, and then Houston are in. Dallas and Memphis are the 7 and 8, but then you've got Portland, New Orleans, Sacramento, and San Antonio, and even Phoenix that for however unlikely it is, still has at least a little bit of a shot to get into the playoffs. So as you hear those teams that are in, who's your favorite, and then who do you have matching up in the NBA Finals as we kind of get to this format?
So this is really hard because we don't know, right? This as long of a layoff as we've had, if we can look at kind of the way they were playing in what, February, March, but that was February, March. We're in June now, right? We're talking about the end of July when they come back. The teams that were gelled and teams that were clicking in March are not going to be clicking, or doesn't mean they're going to be clicking in August. So it really just, I think the favorite has to be the Lakers. Chris, you said it. Like, LeBron's just out of his mind, or he was there at the end before COVID. So as long as he comes back playing the way he did, AD does what he does on the defensive end, and they keep getting quality minutes out of the guys you mentioned, Kuzma and Dwight Howard and the like, I think the Lakers have to be the favorite. Prediction wise, because you don't have the cohesive season, there's been this breakdown. I think that just unmatched athleticism and talent is going to kind of win out, and that's why I have the Lakers and the Bucks. I know it's chalk, but Lakers and Bucks in the finals, because Giannis will do what he does, LeBron will do what he does with his parts, and I think the Lakers pull it out in 6.
Okay, yeah, that's a not so bold prediction, but hey, I mean, again, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Is in this scenario, you are probably going to see the more talented teams, kind of the cream of the crop rise to the top, without a doubt. I agree with you guys in terms of, I think the obvious favorite is LA. And it could be either team. I think if you look at those are probably the 2 best teams. But I do think that because of that adds a lot of extra pressure, because it's almost like, okay, this is LeBron and the Lakers to lose. So I'm going to go a little off the wall. And I say off the wall, I mean, they're both in the top 3 of their own, of the conferences. But in terms of the NBA Finals, I'm taking Doc Rivers playing his old team, and I've got the Clippers and the Celtics making it to the NBA Finals. I think the Celtics were –
Homer.
Well, but I'm not even really a Celtics fan anymore, man. When we moved back to Tennessee, I went all in on the Grizzlies, John Morant.
Good up-and-coming team.
That's right. But I really think the Clippers, Kawhi's been there, Doc's been there before. I think that they are set up to dethrone LeBron, and I think there's going to be so much pressure, and it's going to be those 2 in the Western Conference Finals. It's just kind of shaping up that way. And then the Celtics kind of the same way, man. They really started to gel as things were heading down the stretch there before things really got kind of interrupted. And I think that they are really just kind of ready to make a push. I'm not a believer in the Raptors after what they lost last year. I know it's, as Rudy T said back in '95, it's hard to beat a champion or never underestimate the heart of a champion. But I don't think the Raptors are going to get there. And I think people will look and see what the Raptors did last year with Giannis in the playoffs, or Giannis, or however you say it, Kyle. And I think the Celtics will pack it in and make the rest of the team beat them in the playoffs. So I'm going Clippers and Celtics. Chris, any predictions from you going into this format for an NBA final?
Yeah, you know what? I was kind of hoping they would go like an international play, like group style, because out of every sport, basketball is kind of chalk. Like
Yeah.
if you think about it, it's usually the top two seeds in each conference are usually gonna make it to the finals. And a group stage would have, it would have changed up a little. We might see Memphis or New Orleans maybe make a run. That could have been interesting because I think we like to see that David versus Goliath aspect. And in basketball, we never really get that. We don't. Once in a while, you'll see a 1B to 8, but it's usually because like when Chicago lost to Sixers because Derrick Rose got hurt. The Knicks beat the Heat back in '99.
Mm-hmm.
It was the lockout season, so were Miami really the best team? So and I think Denver beat Seattle years ago.
Yep.
But
Mutombo.
yeah, Mutombo. So it's I would have liked to have seen that because you can no. But it would have been interesting to see that aspect. But as far as with this current format, like you picked Boston to win, that means Milwaukee obviously going to make it, and that puts so much pressure on them because Giannis is a free agent after next year.
Yeah.
So that just puts so much pressure on them. They have the most pressure out of any team. If the Lakers don't win, you could say, oh, look, LeBron, too much layoff. He's older. He just, it happened. But Milwaukee, if they don't win, they have so much pressure because now they got to figure out how do we keep him because he hasn't signed an extension or anything. And, you don't want to lose, you're in a small town, you're not a big market. To lose Giannis, who's the face of the franchise, that's tough. That's tough to recover from. And we see him from other teams. It's hard to recover when you lose a superstar. The Cavs, every time they lose LeBron, they're the worst team ever. So so it's going to be interesting to see. But if I had to pick right now, I'm gonna go Bucks versus the Lakers, and the Lakers winning the whole thing.
Okay, so we got 2 Bucks Lakers and 1 Clippers Celtics. We'll come back to that in October. And figure out who may have had a correct prediction. Guys, we're going to switch it up a little bit. I know, it does sound so weird. We're supposed to be getting ready for NBA Finals right now, or NBA playoffs, like right in the thick of it, and we're looking at a fall playoff round. It's going to be weird. But, guys, let's switch it up a little bit. We'll get back to some NBA, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about a list that you put together, Chris, for your website about the top 25 NBA players of all time and what you thought they were. But let's just switch it up just from a content standpoint, just talk about something a little bit different. Kyle, I know you're very excited to get into this. So, Chris, you put out a list on your website, which is the offtheballpodcast.com, about your top 50 wrestlers of all time. Now, I think I mentioned to you in an email, I'm not a huge wrestling fan. Used to be a diehard fan when I was a kid. Kyle is kind of the same way. He's kept up a little bit more than I have, but we're 80s, 90s nostalgia. Like, give us the Monday Night Wars type of wrestling fans.
Yeah, I love that era.
But you put together this list. So first, just tell us a little bit about your criteria, and then we're going to critique it, man. We're gonna hit you up with a little bit of our thoughts on it. But just tell us a little bit about what into it and why you decided to kind of rank people where you did.
When I came up this list probably like a few years ago, and every year I look back at it, I'm like, I tweak it, see how I like and this like, but it's hard to do 50 top 50 wrestlers, let alone a top 10 or anything. And I did 50 because I was just let me go at it. And I remember just going through like a week stretch where I just watched so much, wrestling, like an old school wrestling, and it's really hard to really put together a list because there's so many aspects of wrestling. It's not just the actual wrestling, it's the promos and, if you're over championships. And so when I just put it together, I try to cram everything together and I just say, who do I think are the best guys? And that's kind of how I went about this list. And some guys that I like personally, but, I just put who I think are the best professional wrestlers. And it wasn't just WWE. Guys from NWA and TNA and, WCW days and, ECW. And I just try to figure out, all right, who I think are the best. And that's kind of how I made the list. But it's probably the hardest list to do out of anything, even, football, basketball. It's probably the hardest thing because there's just so many aspects that goes into, who do I think is the best? Who do I think, who fits there? And I every day I look at the list like, well, all right, I should move that guy up. And then, oh, damn, people look, oh, why do you have that guy so low? I was like, oh, well, I like his wrestling catalog. I like his matches better than this guy. But this guy's a good promo. I was like, yeah, he is better. So there's just so many aspects, of wrestling that's just not just strictly wrestling. Like I said, promos and I like entrances. I'm a big entrance guy too. Entrance pop. If I like entrances. So there were just so many criteria I had. So I just try to put them all together and try to make the best list I could possibly make, and not just be also recent bias. Sure. I'm 31, so Attitude Era is kind of my I don't have just guys. Just anyone from the Attitude Era. I try to get older guys too. From the 80s and 70s. Try to compact the list, and I think I had a solid list. But everyone's list would be different. So
for sure,
So that's just how I went about it.
Yeah, man. Well, just what you just talked about, the fact that you took all those aspects. I mean, kudos to you, because I'm thinking like, okay, who have I seen that has had the best matches? Kind of like you said, who's been able to cut the best promos? Who's just the best character? And I think like you hit on, man, it's hard to do this with wrestlers, and I think a lot of it is because, I mean, let's just be honest, it's scripted. Shocker.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for everyone out there.
Oh, no. I didn't know. Wait, what?
It's still real to me.
No, it's still real to me, damn it. Oh, man, you just broke my heart. You just broke my heart, man.
But it's saying all that. I mean, it's
it.
not just about wins and losses, because you can't really that's not overly about talent. So that's kudos. Kyle, I know you got a lot of thoughts on this. We got to take to a quick break, and we'll come back with your thoughts. But we'll be right back on Dad's Watching Sports. We got the hot take of Kyle's thoughts on the top 50 wrestlers of all time list. We will be right back. Thanks for checking out this week's episode of Dad's Watching Sports. We hope you subscribe to our show in Apple Podcast app as well, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But are you following us on social media? Now, whether your thing is Facebook, Twitter, the Gram, YouTube, or yes, even TikTok, you can find some great dad content on all of our pages. Now, enough of this nonsense. We just need to pay Kirk's PlayStation internet bill. Now, back to the show with Matt, Kyle, Michael, and all the fun of Dad's Watching Sports. And we are back here on Dad's Watching Sports. It's episode 18, the week of June 7th, 2020. Michael Draper, Kyle Castles, and Chris Lebron of the Off the Ball podcast. Chris is talking about his top 50 wrestlers of all time list. You can check it out on his website. Kyle, I know you got a lot of good thoughts on it. Before you get into yours, Chris, as I was just looking through it, and I'll be honest, I just had a few moments to glance at it earlier today, but when I looked at it, I said, man, first off, kudos for you to going through and like I said, putting all this info in. I think Roddy Piper might be a little too high just on my in terms of my comparison and how I see him kind of ranking in the historical greats. And Triple H, I know he's kind of going on to bigger and better things, but having him at where you had him, I thought he was a little low. That's just my opinion, but he's definitely one of the all-time greats for sure. So Kyle, I'm gonna toss it over to you. Because I know you've been chomping at the bit to talk about this. What's some of your thoughts on that list?
Yeah. So first off, heck of a job. I think there's some people you left off. I don't remember seeing Andre on there. I feel like Andre the Giant.
I think I had him.
Is he down low? Maybe.
He's maybe a little low. I might have left him out on accident. If I did, that's my mistake. Yeah. And let me see.
I don't have your list in front of me. I just have my notes, and I
think I left him out.
And ultimately. And I wasn't going to even bring this one up because I get why you would have left him off, but you mentioned entrances, and one of the best entrances ever, Ultimate Warrior. And I get that he cut some nonsensical promos, but in the late 80s with just the charisma and and the delivery and all, it kind of worked real well. So those are two that I thought, might need to get thrown on. But your top two, you can't go wrong. Michael's Flair, I don't care which one you'll put 1, 2. That's perfect.
Yes.
There is not better than those two. However, Taker at 3 kind of bothered me.
Okay.
I think he's the best character ever. By far the best character. However, I don't feel he's ever been the biggest draw in that company at any time.
No, you're right.
I think Brett was a bigger draw. Shawn was a bigger draw. Then Austin was a bigger draw. Rock was a bigger draw. Yeah. Trips was a bigger draw. Lesnar, Cena. I mean, they've all been bigger draws. And that's taking anything away. I think that Taker's the best big man ever. Right. So, I mean, I'm not taking anything away, but to me, Austin's number 3. And especially if you go look at his early stuff in WCW days when he was tagging with Brian Pillman, when he was in the what was
Pillman, man. Yeah.
What was the
Hollywood Blondes, yeah.
The Hollywood Blondes,
Yeah.
When he was in the Dangerous Alliance with Paulie Dangerous,
he cut those promos.
That was some great promos there, right?
Yeah.
And he had, Rick Rude was in that group too. That was a great group, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was. I feel like Austin. If you start looking at that, the work rate's there, the matches are there, and then his character change. I mean, when he goes to Stone Cold, he can't do that type of style in the ring. Plus injuries, it changes him. He goes to this brawler. But to me, like the only person that can touch his mic work is The Rock and maybe Flair at his very best.
Flair and Rock. I would have loved the Flair Rock.
Oh, I know.
Program.
Give me like 19. What was it? 83, 84 Flair for the gold, where he was with the Race in the Ring. Give me that Flair with Rock from like what 2000, 99, 2000.
Even heel Rock was to me is the most underrated heel. I know it wasn't that long. It was probably a few months, but heel Rock.
Yeah.
Promos were just A1. Like the promos he cut against Austin, Goldberg. It's tremendous. But
and then you were talking about some great heel mic work. You got one of my guys that I love. My favorite guy to never win a world title was Jake Roberts.
Oh my God, he's so good.
That dude. So he cut a promo at the 91 Survivor Series. That was right after, if you remember, he had the cobra that bit
Randy Savage.
Macho Man.
Randy Savage, and he talks to Elizabeth in the promo, and that late 80s, early 90s where they scream everything, and he's just quiet. You got to listen, and oh my God, he's great. That's probably my favorite promo of all time, regardless of it. I will point out that there were no women on your list.
Yeah, I probably should have just put. That's what I meant. It's just the men, but the women. That's something I'm definitely going to work on too. Because that's
so. If you wanted to throw some women on, my first thought was Medusa, Alundra Blaze. I mean, she kind of puts women wrestling.
Yeah, she changed the game.
Yeah, but if you could talk about some of the Joshis from Japan, like Chigusa Nagayo or Lioness Asuka, like those women just tore the house down all the time. And that was a tag team. I forget what their name was, but you got some women you could throw in there. I wouldn't be surprised if you go another 10 years, you might be able to throw Charlotte Flair on this list.
She's tremendous.
Maybe
I know people give her a lot of crap, because she's Flair and
fantastic.
She's really good.
I love Sasha Banks. I love her in-ring work. I think she's great. So there's some of these women that now that women are getting a spotlight, they're starting to put together some really good matches, some good storytelling. So all in all, great list. A few of them that I probably I would take off. Had some others, but I'm not going to argue with you.
I did think of one that kind of like you saw Andre wasn't on the list. That I'll be honest with you, Chris, I'm a little disappointed it didn't make your cut, and that's the Disco Inferno, man. Disco Inferno was burning.
He's still wrestling. He's still wrestling in Impact Wrestling.
Of course he is. Because he's one of the top 50 greatest wrestlers of all time, man. That's talking about one of the greatest characters. He
Disco.
I follow him on Twitter. He's pretty common.
Yeah, he's funny. Yeah, but I'm definitely gonna work on a women's list for sure, because there's so, like you said, there's so much talented females now, and
especially out of Japan there in the late 80s and through the 90s, like there was so much good talent.
Yeah, and then Impact too, Impact TNA, and after 2010 to 2014, the Knockouts division.
Yeah,
Gail Kim, Mickey James, Velvet Sky, they were really they kind of started the revolution with the women.
Absolutely. You could look at Velvet Sky and Angelina Love.
Yeah, the beautiful people. The beautiful people.
And they, you early on they were not great, but man, by the time you get to that 2010, 2011, man, they are firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Awesome Kong too.
Awesome Kong
and Gail King matches were tremendous. Yeah. So I definitely got to do a women's list. That's definitely on.
I'm going to be honest. This is the last probably 2 minutes of this conversation has just been whoosh, right. Y'all are naming names off, and kudos to y'all. But I'm like, man, I'll be honest.
I mean, I didn't even mention Aja Kong, but when you said Awesome Kong, maybe think about
it's
good
crazy.
stuff.
So much talent.
That's good stuff. Let's shift gears, and I know we were going to talk about your NBA list, and we're just kind of running out of time, so we'll have to come back to that. And I know we had some good thoughts on that, but one thing I wanted to get to that we are actually going to see here in the near future, Chris, some of the other stuff you do on your website is you kind of redraft NBA drafts. So just tell us a little bit of kind of what goes into that, and let's talk a little bit about the 2020 NBA draft as we found out exactly when that date's going to be. But tell us a little bit about what goes into those redrafts that you do on your website.
Yeah, it's I love doing redrafts. It's something I just do on the regular by myself. So I decided to, I've done 3 so far. So I just decided to go find a guest and we just go on and we just we do our own redrafts and we usually do the lottery and it's fun to go back and see people's mess ups and why people didn't draft Giannis, why people didn't find Giannis. I did 2012. And 2013 was Giannis, and I like to go back and see like what's the thought process during that time. So I like to go back and think, all right, who's on that team during that time, and why did they do what they? Why did they do what they did? Why did they draft this player over that player? So I like to go back in time and revisit that, and it's fun. I did, like I said, I did the 20. I've done 2013, 2012, and I believe 2016, 2014. Yeah, I did 2014 with Karl Anthony Towns draft. But going back to where Giannis was like the 15th pick, and I actually had on a scout whose father was a VP for the Bucks, and went into like, how the hell did you find this guy? And he played in a league in Greece that was like the equivalent to like a YMCA league. Nice. Like it was that bad. So it's great that so you could see why he wasn't like a top pick, because you look back now like, how wasn't he the number 1 pick without you run there and you say Giannis number 1 pick, but he played in YMCA level talent and he was just super raw. Like he is what he is now still. Yeah.
Well, I gotta cut you off right there. As someone who spent the majority of my professional career in the YMCA, I can't let you dog the YMCA like that. YMCA, they get
some dogs chippy in the YMCA. A lot of elbows. I've gotten to some scraps of
without a doubt. Yeah, they get a little chippy in there for sure. Well, let's fast forward to 2020. We found out that the draft's going to be in mid-October. Kyle, there's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. We still don't exactly know. Some of these players have the ability to kind of still pull out if they want to, and there's just a lot that can go into it. But this is kind of where we stand right now, Kyle. Who do you have as the number 1 pick going into the draft? Because that's kind of the topic that everybody ends up talking about.
So I'm assuming the Warriors win the lottery just because I think right now they still have the best chance. And if that's the case, I think James Wiseman goes number 1. They don't need a scorer like Anthony Edwards. I don't think they really want to bring LaMelo Ball into that core. And I think James Wiseman kind of gives them a defensive presence down there in the low post. So I go James Wiseman.
Yeah, I'm very similar, and not to kind of cop out of my own question, but I think it really just depends on who has that pick. If it's Golden State, I'm right there with you. I think it could either be a Okoro from Auburn or James Wiseman. I think I could see Golden State backing out of that pick, trading down a little bit if somebody's interested in LaMelo or Anthony Edwards or somebody else. They could trade down and get Obi Toppin as a big guy as well. But I think it all depends on who ends up getting that first pick, whether if it's Cleveland or Atlanta or the Knicks. Chris, but Chris, who do you think?
Probably not. The Knicks, probably not.
Let's be honest, that's not happening.
No, that's not happening.
But as you look at it right now, who would be if things kind of shaked out like we said, who do you think would be the number 1 pick?
Like you said, it depends on the team. I mean, with this draft, there's not a clear-cut number 1 guy.
Right.
Because I've seen guys have Obi Toppin number 1, and then guys have Obi Toppin at 17. And LaMelo Ball, same way. It feels like there's such a wide range between guys. Wiseman, I've heard number 1, but people don't like that he's not really a shooter. And he's just, he's kind of those type of big men are kind of dinosaurs in a way, unless he could develop a jump shot and stuff, then, I could see him. But this draft is it's all over the place. Like I said, guys are ranging from 1 to 18. And it's like, it's a big crapshoot. But right now, let's say the Warriors are the worst team, so let's say they get the ping pong ball, and I think they trade the pick, and I think they try to get a veteran because they're in win now mode, and to try to develop a guy, it takes time. These kids are young; they're coming in young, so it's gonna take time to develop. So I think they would trade the pick. I think try to get a veteran to come in. And try to help, get another guy to try to win a championship.
Yeah, but they're not going to trade the pick to a team who's going to go out and get James Wiseman. If you're trading up, you're going to get a score. So I think that puts Anthony Edwards kind of in that conversation, right?
Yeah. He's the best old LeBron player.
Yeah.
One of the guards would end up being that number one pick if they traded out for sure. So what about best? Chris, I'll toss to you first, and then Kyle. Best prospect, and then who you think of the guys that have been mentioned in the top, lottery. We'll say, who do you think is kind of lined up for a bust?
I think LaMelo is the best player. I think he has the most upside. Obviously, he comes with a lot of baggage,
Right.
so I think that worries people. And he's also the top. He could be the bust, the biggest bust, because he comes with a lot of baggage and stuff. So he could be one of the, because all his his passing is tremendous. Like I posted a couple of videos on Twitter, and some of the passes he's making are elite, and that's something. He's great in transition, and he could score, and those things. If he could take it to the next level, he could be a tremendous. He could be a 25-10 guy. But on the other hand, he comes with a lot of baggage because big baller brand, big pop up.
Yep.
Especially in New York, I've been really back and forth. If he comes to New York, Papa's going to be loud.
Oh yeah.
And there's mics everywhere in New York. They're going to be like, oh, but how do you feel about the coach doing this? And that comes, that's tough. And he already have a lot of fame. We've heard about him for what? Since he was a freshman in high school.
Oh,
so
sure.
We've heard about him a lot. So will he have that drive to want to be great? Because he already has the money, the fame. He's got social media. He's got millions of followers. Will that drive be there, to the next? Because he really doesn't have anything to really, work for, because he has everything already. He's got the money, like I said, money, fame, all this. So he also has the biggest bust factor to me. So he could be the best player. You could get excited because you see the passing and the scoring, but then everything else, he's very lackadaisical. If he doesn't have the ball, off the ball, no pun intended, he's useless. He doesn't really put the time in. He doesn't really move around, and defensively, he's not that good. The people, you could see the steals, and people like, oh, he had a lot of steals, but a lot of guys, Steph Curry led the league in steals one year, and we know he's not a good defender. Allen Iverson also, so that's a lie. You just you play the passing lanes well. Bad passes, anyone can get a steal. So
for sure.
I think he's both. He could be the best player, but he could also be the biggest bust. He's the most polarizing player in this draft by far. So, it's going to be interesting to see, where he goes.
Kyle, who's somebody you think could be like a late lottery into the second round that could be a good value pick, or maybe the best value pick of the draft?
All right, so I was calling you Homer, picking the Celtics earlier. You can call me Homer now. Yeah, Robert Woodard II out of Mississippi State. Combo forward, got I think I read a 7'1", maybe 7'2" wingspan. He really improved his shooting this year. And you take a guy like that and maybe put him into the 4 and let him kind of be a little bit of a stretch 4. I don't know, he's not dirt by any means, but he can kind of spread the floor out a little bit if that shooting continues to improve. And so I like Robert Woodard II.
Okay, that's a good pick. I'm going to go for my value pick, and this is a guy that's going to be – it may even work his way in the lottery, but it's definitely going to be a first-round pick. And that's R.J. Hampton. He was one of the top point guards in the country coming out 2 years ago or last year. Did not play college basketball this past year, went over to New Zealand. Didn't have just a tremendous season, but I think he's going to have a little bit of a leg up where he played against some professionals, maybe not as good as some college basketball players, but all around probably better than what people saw in college. And that's going to be the guy that I think is a little bit off the radar. He's not talked about with some of the better guards in the draft, but the guy's uber talented, and I think could be a really good value for somebody picked in the maybe 12 to 18 range, and get him at a really good steal, where he would have been, probably a top 5 pick if he had been able to come out of high school the year before that. Chris, we're running really short on time, but really quickly, anybody you got as a good value pick?
Trey Jones from Duke. I'm a Duke fan, so I kind of biased with that. I'm sorry. Yeah, man. I'm a Duke fan. Yeah,
I wish I'd have known that before we invited you on the show, man. That's unfortunate. We will now edit out all your
I'm sorry, guys. But I like Trey Jones a lot. He's really improved from his freshman year to from sophomore year. He worked on, his shooting percentage went up. His defense got even better. Defensive player of the year in the ACC. So I think, he's going to be a solid pick for at the end of the first round. Good, all around point guard and someone that could help, come off the bench, for any team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he will be a guy that's able to, as much as it pains me to say this, he does the things that a lot of guys don't want to do. He gets in you
Yeah, he does the
guards.
dirty work. Yeah,
Yeah, and
he'll get into guards. Yeah, he'll do that dirty work.
Yeah, without a doubt. Guys, we've only got a few minutes left, but Kyle, I definitely wanted to touch on this before we left. Johnny Majors, legendary coach at the University of Tennessee, passed away this past week. We also had Pat Dye earlier in this kind of season, who's a legendary coach at Auburn University, pass away. So it kind of got me thinking, the SEC, Chris, I know you're probably not biased against the SEC the way we are biased for the SEC. But the SEC is so rich in tradition for football. And you think of all the legendary players and the teams, but the coaches, man, breaking that down. So I wanted us to put together a top 5 list, and we really don't have a whole lot of time to go into a lot of detail, but maybe just your top 5 and maybe just a little nugget about each. Kyle, I'm going to let you go last. I'll go ahead and start. So my top 5, I'm going to start at number 5. Kyle, I think this is who you were going with earlier when you kind of talked offline. It's a tie between Butch Jones and Hugh Freeze for me at number 5. I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm going to stay in Knoxville, but I'm going with the General Robert Neyland as my number 5. Number 4, the only good Dooley that's a good coach, Vince Dooley from Georgia at number 4. Kyle, you're going to be shocked here. Number 3, even though he was originally at the University of Kentucky, Bear Bryant at number 3. Nick Saban from LSU and Bama at number 2. And the number 1 coach that I have of all SEC football history is the head ball coach, Steve Spurrier, because he was dominant. He changed the game with the fun and gun offense. He got Danny Warfel, of all people, a Heisman Trophy.
Heisman, right?
He rebuilt South Carolina. He kept Peyton Manning, who was arguably the best player in SEC history, from winning the SEC, anything in the SEC, and he delivered the best line of all time, which is you can't spell citrus without UT. Chris, I will toss it to you. I know you're not an SEC guy, but who would you consider your top 5 SEC coaches of all time?
Of all time, I mean, Spurrier's in there for sure. I mean, you got to put Saban in there. I mean, I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan, so I'm more ACC.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't think right now, but I know Saban, Spurrier. Who's
Mark
the Tennessee
Stoops.
Coach?
Yeah, Mark Stoops. That's
who's the coach for Tennessee for all those years? I can't think of his name.
Phil Fulmer.
Phil Fulmer.
I like Phil Fulmer.
Yeah.
Who else? I'm gonna think.
I mean, you got to say Bear, right? Bear Bryant.
Bear Bryant and oh God, I can't believe him. Urban Meyer.
Okay, yeah, that's
Urban
good.
Meyer, Florida. He had a lot of criminals on the team, and they were doing a lot of crazy stuff. They were killing people, but he got to have a few bad apples to win some national championships. So I'll put Urban in there.
All right, Kyle, you can close us out here. Your top 5.
Yeah, so I'll go 5-1. Number 5 for me, Hurts. It was down. I had 2 that kind of fit right here, and it was either Vince Dooley, who I left out, and I ended up putting in Johnny Vaught. Johnny Vaught, legendary Ole Miss coach. I mean, the stadium's Vaught Hemingway, named for Coach Vaught, and he won a national title at Ole Miss. I mean, to win a national title. But I'm pretty sure it was Coach Vaught.
Yeah.
So Johnny Vaught. Number 4, Steve Spurrier. I mean, the ball coach. I don't feel like I have a whole lot to say there.
Yeah.
Nick Saban at 3, and that's subject to change as he continues to win. Then I have General Robert Neyland at 2, and the second best college football coach of all time, Bear Bryant, at number 1. But the best college football coach of all time, coached in the ACC.
Bobby Bowden?
Bobby Bowden.
There you go. Very nice. All right, guys, we got to get out of here.
I hate to agree with that. The Florida State guy. I know
but you have to agree with it. It's Bobby.
He is great. Yeah.
They went wide right, man. That's all that matters. Wide right.
Hey, I played at Samford University, and that was Howard University when Coach Bowden played there, and he coached there. So there's a Bowden connection.
Oh, dude. Okay, I get it.
If you had not heard, Kyle played college football, and that's what makes him correct in everything that he talks about.
Because of that, I'm always right.
Guys, we got to get out of here. We're running short. We're way past on time. I'm gonna have to edit the heck out of this show. But Chris, thanks so much, man,
It's your
for joining
job.
us. Man, we
Thank you
appreciate
for having me on.
Oh man, thanks
Thank
for
you for having me
all
on,
the,
guys.
This
was
info
fun.
And please go and check out his website and the show. You can check him out, the Off the Ball podcast. Check him out and Facebook and iTunes and everywhere you find podcasts. Go ahead and check him out. We will be back with you next week. This has been Dad's Watching Sports. We'll see you next time. Y'all take care.